Hi friends, Prepared Suburbanite here. We wanted to share with you in this particular video some of the tricks that we've learned over time to keep our food stores safe for the long term when we need to store it. A lot of times when you buy these kinds of things that are staples, we consider them staples because we use them frequently. They come in cardboard boxes, and there may be a wax paper bag on the inside that holds the contents. There may be a plastic bag on the inside that holds the contents, but it's not conducive to long-term storage. So what we want to do in this video is share some of the tips that we use to keep these kinds of dry goods safe and stored for a long time. So stick around. So some of the things that we do keep on hand and store for the long term in case we ever need it when the big S hits the big fan. Instant mashed potatoes, salt, sugar, cornmeal, salt, that kind of stuff. We've got kosher salt here, and we've got regular iodized sea salt here. These do not keep real well in these cardboard type boxes. So what we've done, and we've invested a little bit of money, not a whole lot, in a Foodsaver vacuum sealing kit. This is what we use to vacuum seal rice and beans and meats and stuff like that. But it comes with, and if you're interested in this idea, make sure that the Foodsaver, and I gotta recommend Foodsaver as a brand because we've had nothing but good luck with it, but you gotta make sure you get one of these accessory hoses that connects to the machine and to these sealing lids that go on top of the mason jar. There's a size for the wide mouth and a size for the smallmouth cans, jars. This hooks into here.
So you must have one with a port. Your Foodsaver needs to have a port for the hose, and some of them don't. So be sure you have that.
Right. Right. So just make sure if you're going to order one of these or buy one of these at your local department store that you just make sure that it's got the accessory hose and a port to hook it up to. These lids, these sealing lids, are really hard to come by right now. I looked over the weekend to see if I could find any of these anywhere, and they're all out of stock everywhere. So I think there's an awful lot of folks that are interested in this kind of stuff, that are actively involved in making sure that their food stays safe. What we're going to do here is show you the steps in the process that we go through when we do this process. It doesn't take all that long. We're going to do the salt, the cornmeal, this sea salt, and some sugar, so that you can see how it all comes together, what we do, how long it really takes. So be right back.
Just as an aside, because regular canning jars are very difficult to come by right now, we have a backlog of them, so we're very blessed. But if you can't find them, you can actually use some of the jars that some of the sauces and other things come in that you buy in the grocery store. You do have to make sure that they're the deep lidded jars. Some of them, this is a Classic Code Atlas jar, but the jar lid is, this is not deep enough, and the jar lid is very shallow, and you can sort of see the difference here. Those jars and their lids can be thrown away unless you can find another use for them, because you can't use them for dry storage or canning. Now when we use the vacuum sealer, jar sealers, you make sure, of course, that your hose is in the port, and this lid, jar sealer, you have to take a regular sealing lid, place it on the jar, place the jar sealer over, push it down, and attach it with the hose before you run the sealer.
So question for you, how far up should you fill the jars with the dry goods that you're trying to seal up?
The dry goods can be filled in the jar to about 1 inch. So just at this, even a 1/2 inch for some things, but if it's real powdery, 1 inch is better. So if you just fill it to this first rim of the jar, then it won't be as likely to suck up into the vacuum, which it sometimes does with things like flour. Sometimes the vacuum sealer sucks that light fluffy stuff into the sealer itself.
So what we got going here is a bag of Domino regular white sugar that we bought probably 6 months ago at the local wholesale club. It came in a Ziploc bag, thick plastic, but there was obviously a little bit of moisture around somewhere during the packaging cycle, and it clumped up a little bit. So what we're doing right now is trying to separate that out, breaking up the clumps so that the vacuum sealing process will go a little bit smoother. So go ahead. So a couple of thoughts and a couple of tips, things that we've learned by doing here, is that with these regular mouth sealer lids, that you really need 2 lids. You put 2 lids on the jar, put that on there, suck the air out, and this top lid will pop off. This one will stay sealed to the jar. I think it's because of the construction of these. There's a little bit wider gap between the gasket and the frame on the regular size than there is on the large mouth or the wide mouth sealer lid. So just a tip that you should probably always use 2 lids when you're using the regular size jars.
Not necessary for the large jars.
Yeah, not necessary. In fact, it probably would be counterproductive if you did it with the large mouth or the wide mouth jars. Make sure that your jars are clean before you fill them up with stuff. You run them through your dishwasher, wash them by hand, hot soapy water. Make sure they're dry, and then you can use them. And yep, make sure your lids are clean around here so that there isn't any sugar or oatmeal or whatever you're doing stuck on there, because it just won't seal right. When you're using the Foodsaver, at least the model that we've got, is you've got to undo this latch on the left-hand side when you're done, and then relock it before you start the vacuum process. You close that latch, then press the start button, which may be different on the model that you've got, but ours is right there. It's the dark button, and it'll run for a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds or so, and you'll hear the lid pop. Now, for those that are into canning, when those lids pop, it's a happy sound. But you'll hear that pop. In fact, you may have heard it a couple of times during the presentation here. That little pop, that little red light will come on that kind of lets you know that it's done, sort of, but it's an automatic shutoff. Once the air is out and it's vacuum sealed, then the vacuum machine shuts off. You can pull this to finish, pull your lid off, test it just to make sure that everything is going to be there and it's nice and tight. Remember to label your jars as you're doing it, because they all kind of look similar here, and if you don't label them one at a time, you might end up mixing salt with sugar, and you sure don't want to do that. Make sure you date them as well. The date that you vacuum sealed them, I think that's going to be important if you're planning on doing some long-term storage. I think that's about it for this particular thing. These are some of the tricks that we use to keep our food for long-term storage right here at the homestead. So this is the Prepared Suburbanite and Mrs. Prepared, who's always prepared, reminding you to be prepared always, and I'll see you all on the next video.